Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to my Instagram, Ask Adam Torres, and send me a DM and let me know why you'd be a great fit for the show. All right, so first off, for the long-term listeners, you may recall I've done some episodes with Russell in the past. Russell has been published in our best-selling Business Leaders book series, Mission Matters. And first off, man, Russell, it's been a while. Welcome back to the show. It's been too long, man.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, it's hard to believe when we were talking the other day, and I said, yeah, volume 7, and you said, we're on volume 21. I'm like, holy smoke.
No, we're on volume 11, man. Don't
volume
be
11.
me like that. Come on.
So, but even think about that, how this started and how we first met. What, back in 19, I think, wasn't it? 2019 we met?
Yeah.
We did the first podcast.
Pre-COVID, right? Whoa.
Yeah, remember that? That was pretty wild. So
yeah.
But it's pretty interesting because I get a lot of people, when they come into my office, I'll tell them, reach behind you and they'll, grab the book and they'll hand me the book. And they look at it and, it has our, your picture and my picture on the cover. And they looked and said, you wrote? I said, well, I wrote a chapter in this book. I said, it's a book on leadership. I said, well, I'll give you an idea kind of who I am as an advisor and how I view things. And then I'll autograph it. It's pretty amazing. Even my two brothers, which was funny when the book first came out, my two brothers were like, I hand them the book and they said, will you autograph it? I'm like, you're my brothers. And they said, we don't care. We want you to autograph it. So it's amazing how that book and the information in it, not just from me, but the information from it, from the other, co-authors of the book. And all the podcasts that I've listened to with you, it's pretty dynamic and pretty interesting, the quality of people that you have brought to Mission Matters.
Yeah, well, it's been quite a pleasure, and it's really been an honor. One of the coolest things I think about our book series and just the community in general is really it's kind of like I guess I'll use the word volunteer army. Like nobody has to.
Good way of saying it. Yeah,
nobody
good way.
Has to come on here and share their stories. Nobody has to be in these books. Like, we're all busy professionals, business owners. Everybody's got things to do, but I feel like people taking the time out to come and give their story to share with others for the benefit of the community, I think it's a beautiful thing. And that's how this whole book series has come to. And I'm telling you, man, I was talking to Shirag. For those that are listening that maybe don't know, Shirag is the other co-founder here. I was talking to him the other day and I was like, man, can you imagine this? We're on volume 11. How did that happen? And I was covering this other conference where the president was doing the opening keynote and like all this other stuff. Elon Musk is there and all this other, these people are like kind of really close to me. I'm like, man, like from starting with this little, baby company, and we're still small. I mean, compared to the Yahoos or the, iHeartRadios, over 4,000 employees, right? According to Google. So we're still babies in the media space, but we punch above our weight. And I'm telling them, like, man, how is this even happening? Like, how cool.
Well, the thing is that you punch above your weight, but like your title, of your company and of the books, your Mission Matters, it's not to me, when I met you the first time, it's not a way for you just to do revenue. You really care about bringing people from different diverse backgrounds together with a common goal of everybody learning from each other. That's unique. Because everybody usually has some type of what I call some type of end game. There's an end game to what they're doing. And I don't see that in you. And I think we developed a really nice friendship to that point, because our company is called Planning Legacies Financial Group, and your company's Mission Matters. So the synergy aligns, I think, pretty amazingly. And the people that you bring to the Mission Matters community, I think, like I said, very diverse, but all have the same passion to bring a difference to somebody's life, whether it's one person reads the book or it's 1,000 people read the book. If you made a difference in one person by reading a book or listening to a podcast from Mission Matters, that to me means we've done our jobs. We've done, where we've impacted, our communities in some form or fashion.
Speaking of your business, let's go further into it. So maybe talk a little bit more. It's been a while since you've been on here. Planning Legacies Financial Group. Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Well, I always tease people, if it's legal and ethical, someone in my firm can do it. If it's illegal and unethical, I just have to call Father Guido and Company. That's the running joke. We're just basically a full-service financial services firm. If I don't do it, my partner doesn't do it, or we don't have an advisor in our firm that does it, I usually have somebody that I can then say, hey, I need to get better mortgage rate for my, for our client. client, let me call my mortgage guy. So I have guys that are, I say use guys very, very, we have individuals in our firms that have certain niche situations for our clients.
Look who's getting all politically correct in the Midwest today, Russell. Look at you, man. Good stuff. You're like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to say?
I always tell people I should be Popeye. I am what I am. You get what you get with me. It's not somebody that you're gonna think that there's a different person. I'm this way all the time.
You went through all the pronouns for one statement. I love it. Sorry, man. I had to call it out. Go ahead.
So, so in our way, it's basically we basically look at every client or every individual that raises their hand and asks for our help. We look at them very holistically. We don't go in there and say, okay, I'm going to talk about investments, or I'm going to talk about life insurance, or I'm going to talk about planning. We don't know. Everybody's different. Everybody has their dreams that they want to accomplish, and sometimes they don't know how to put that into effect. We had a couple last week that was here, a friend of my, 29-year-old, so now he's 30, right? Yeah, he's 30 now. One of his best friend's parents, and they finally said, hey, can we go talk to Mr. Luce? So I called them. They came in my office, and they said, we've really never sat down with anybody, and we're kind of ashamed of that. We're in our 50s now, and we're really worried about retirement. My goal is always to make people have, leave my office in some form or way that they came in better, go out better than they came in. And I sat down with them. I said, we went through kind of their planning part of it. And I said, okay, tell me your guaranteed income. What do you have guaranteed? Do you have pensions? Do you have Social Security? What your Social Security is, yada, yada, yada. And they said what the numbers were. And I said, okay, now what is it cost to live every month? And they came down with that number. I said, okay, so if I'm adding up really quick, down and dirty, without really doing any digging in, so you guys are fine. I said, what do you mean? I said, you have more than $2,000 a month extra that's covering your bills. And they said, oh my God, we never thought about that. I said, so everything we're talking about now will be gravy. They walked out feeling, pretty good. And that was, and that's ultimately, our goal, my business partner, Tara and I, when we meet and sit down with somebody, we want to make their lives better than when they came in the first place. Whether it's just giving them a piece of advice, whether it's, actually, putting them into a program that makes more sense for them. But we just want them going out feeling better than they came in. And if we do that, it's just like with the book and, with our podcast, whoever's listening, if it goes out and they listen to it and get one idea, or they, come out of it feeling better than they did when they started listening, I think we've done our jobs.
Where do you find people normally go wrong with planning? And I know that there's a million different, scenarios, but like, what are some of the general themes that people where they kind of like, you're like, we can fix that? Well,
you get a lot of folks that are afraid to tell somebody where they're at presently because they're afraid that they haven't done enough, or, they haven't done anything at all. I always tell people, I said, majority of individuals really don't start thinking about retirement until all of a sudden one day they wake up and they're in their 50s and it goes, you know what? We have about 10, 15 years and we're going to retire. We really need to start thinking about this. I don't think you can start planning early enough, but knowing that you can't overplan either. You have to be able to live. I think a lot of people get wrapped up in not planning, and I think a lot of people get wrapped up with planning too much. I always tell people, we have life. Life gets in the way. You have families, you have kids, you have work. I always laugh when I sit down with somebody and says, I'll think about it. And I'm like, you're right, you probably will. I said, are you a beer drinker, wine drinker, you bourbon? What do you like drinking? Bourbon. I said, okay. So you're telling me when you come home tonight, you're going to grab, a bourbon, and you're going to sit down, you're going to kick your shoes off, you're going to put your feet up, and you're going to pull out your financial stuff. And they look at me like, no. Okay. So, you're not thinking about it. You're hoping you put it in a drawer and it magically, you wake up one day and you're, independently wealthy. It doesn't work that way. People spend more time planning their vacations than they plan their financial lives. So,
where do you normally start in your process with people?
Getting to know them.
I'm brand new, you're like, hey, I haven't done much of this before, or maybe I've done some, but I don't know if I'm doing what I should be doing. Like, where do you start with people?
It's kind of like when you walk into your doctor for the first time, you take on a new doctor. What does he do? He basically asks you a lot of questions. Okay. Tell me about your health. Tell me about your lifestyle. Tell me, are you a moderate drinker? Are you a heavy drinker? Do you exercise? Do you not exercise? Basically, before you can really have the right to tell somebody something, or, you got to ask them questions. If you don't get to know them, I'll say this, I hope, they're not going to ever listen. But it's like Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman and some of these people that sit on the radio and tell everybody to do something, and they don't get to know that person. I don't like general answers for individual problems because everybody's individual situations are different. Nobody has the same situation. There just isn't. There's no way. So if you don't get to know the individual on a more, I don't want to say, personal basis, but if you don't ask them questions to find out what makes them tick, what's important to them, or where they see their futures being or want their futures to be, you can't help. So basically it's kind of, I always tell people we're kind of like financial doctors. We're going to ask you a lot of questions, and then if we see there's something you're unhealthy in, we're going to probably prescribe some medication for you, and then we're going to do a follow-up and make sure that we're addressing that condition. And that's kind of the best way to put it with people. You're basically, I always tease people, if you go into a doctor's office and first thing you're going to do is grab their script pad out and start writing your prescription.
Yeah, be scared.
Are you going to be really comfortable with that?
Yeah.
No.
What are you prescribing me when you come out?
Yeah, come on. I just walked in. You don't even know what's wrong or if there's anything wrong. I had a laugh. I did this back. I think Bernie Madoff got arrested in 2009. I think it was 2009. And I did a presentation right after that, a retirement seminar. And a guy at the end of it goes, "How do I know you're not Bernie Madoff?" I said, "You don't." I thought the guy was going to fall out of his chair. Because what do you mean by that? I said, "You just met me 45 minutes ago. You don't know who I am. What I would do is make sure you look me up on the internet. Do your research. Talk to FINRA. Go to the SEC. See if there's any complaints. Make sure you're finding out information about that advisor, just like the advisor is trying to find information out about you." And the personalities have to fit. If you don't like the person that you're sitting across from asking professional, advice from, are you going to probably do it? Probably not. So find an advisor that fits your personality and ask you, the right questions. Ask you, about your family, about your dreams, what your goals are. What does retirement look like to you? What do you want to do in retirement? Well, I want to travel. Do you travel now? No. Okay. What kind of traveling? You got to find information out about people. So it's like, my son is now coming into the business after for years saying he wanted to get into sales. And I always laugh at him. I said, you don't realize, son, that you're selling yourself every day. You, Adam Torres, is selling yourself to a prospective interviewer or interviewee. Why should you be part of our Mission Matters family, type situation? Or you're going to, other situations saying, hey, you need to partner with us so we can get to tell your story. You're always selling yourselves in some form or fashion. Selling to me is just trying to find solutions to situations that people are in that need help. And that's kind of what we do.
That's awesome. So, Russell,
and if I can't do it, I know how to raise my hand really well. I'm really smart about that.
Yeah. So, Russell, what's on the agenda for you this year, man? Tell me about the rest of 2025. What's going on for you, your firm, your family? What's going on?
We've had a lot of exciting things. At the end of 2024, we came into a unique financial tools, both in the investment space and in the insurance space. And we're getting ready to, we've done a lot with it already, but it's game changing for the financial industry. And we got really blessed. I've been blessed over the years to get to where I've met some really great people, i.e. yourself, to where for whatever reason they've taken a liking to me and made me, and given me opportunities that probably you wouldn't get normally. And the growth of our firm, we're starting to add advisors. I grew to 50 at my previous corporate world, and I didn't like managing that many people. So I basically wanted to go back to more of a boutique, smaller firm. But we're at the point now where we're starting to organically grow, which is exciting. We opened up our second office in Indiana, and that's gone really well. We really, like that space where we're at near Valparaiso, Indiana. Actually, we're down the road from Valparaiso University, actually. And we're also now talking about opening up a third office maybe in 2025 yet or 2026, down in my favorite part of Florida, which is Clearwater, Tampa, Largo, Palm Harbor, area. Again, we see, people needing help and mom and pops are getting looked over. Everybody wants the whale. Everybody wants the multimillionaire type of person. And the people in between that really could use the help aren't getting it. They're falling by the wayside. We're expanding our special needs programs. I'm in the process of getting my charter special needs counselor designation, which amazingly will put 16 initials behind my name.
Wow.
Which is mind-boggling. Being 32 years in the business and having 2 autistic children, there's a lot of people that need some type of guidance in planning for family members that have either physical or mental challenges going forward. And I hate these advisors who say, well, I got into it because there's a niche market. You really don't know what that is unless you live it and breathe it, and how much help people need in that, in that arena. So we're growing that aspect of the firm. We just updated our website. We just got into a company that's doing a lot of podcasting, putting our podcast on the website, doing a lot of social media, which we really have never done before. Because like I said, I like working with people that I like. If I don't like the conversation I'm having with a client, or I don't feel the client is listening and doing things appropriately, I'll either pass them on to one of our junior advisors, or I'll just say, you know what, our firm's not a fit for you. I can recommend a couple of advisors that I think would fit you better, but I won't work with anybody that I don't enjoy. It's just life's too short.
So Russell, if somebody's listening to this and they want to follow up and they want to learn more, how do they do that?
It's a couple ways. They can email, which is Russell, RUSSELL, @PLFG.org. They can also call my cell phone, which is 708-308-7545. We don't have an office phone anymore because I'm bouncing between two offices. I tell people, just call my cell phone. And then go to our website, which is www.plfg.org. There's a lot of really good information there for people just generally if they want to find some stuff out. We actually have some videos on our website that a buddy of mine who's a comedian actually did on life insurance and annuities, where he did a very, very humorous kind of presentation. They're not real long. They're like 5 minutes long. They're pretty funny. What we do is something that people, it's not tangible. They can't sit down and go, "Ooh, I like this leather in the seat in this car. This is really great." It's very untangible. So like I said, people need to get out and get information, people need to talk to the advisor. We always tell people this is not one and done. We're not, you're part of our family now. We're part of the Mission Matters family, and we make people part of the Planet Legacies Financial Group family. It's not a one and done. We start working with you. It's a relationship as far as we're concerned.
Fantastic. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes, so you can just click on them and head right on over and check out Russell's website and some of that comedy, man. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Russell, thanks again for coming on the show.
You're welcome. And I'll say this last minute for everybody who's listening. Go back and look at some of the past podcasts. There's a lot of really good people with a lot of really good information that Adam has brought, to the air. It's worth your time to listen at least once a day while you're sitting there, either in the car or like what I do at nighttime, on my iPad, laying in bed, just reading. You'll learn something from almost everybody that he has brought to the table. It's worth your time to be part of the Mission Matters family.